Hello, welcome to the Craft House Magic Set of tutorials. Today I'm going to show you how I knit my socks top down using the magic loop method. So this is going to accompany a pattern that I'm going to upload to Ravelry, which is a simple top down sock pattern which you can find from the link below. So what you'll need is 100 grams of fingering weight yarn. This particular yarn is one that I've hand dyed in the Coming Around Again colourway, and it's a sparkly base. You might be able to see a bit of sparkle there. It's difficult to see on camera though. You've got some needles that are circular needles, and I'd normally go for 2.5mm needles as a starting point, but because I knit quite tightly I'm using 2.75mm ones here. You may find that you need to use 2.25 for instance. The length of my cable is 60 centimetres or 23 inches long. You may find that you want a longer cable than this, especially if you're using more stiff cable like in the Chow Goose red lace needles. I'd definitely go for a longer cable needle there. But these are the higher sharps. They're my favourite needles to knit socks with. You'll also need a couple of stitch markers and a progress keeper to mark where you are in your knitting, and these ones you can find in my Etsy shop if you're interested. So I'm going to start with a long tail cast on, and I have previously uploaded a long tail cast on tutorial, so if you want to find more details about the long tail cast on, I'll leave a link for that tutorial below. So I'm going to cast on 60 stitches because I know that that's a good size for me in socks. You might need to knit a swatch in the round and measure your sock to see whether that's the same stitch count that you'll need. There'll be more details on how to get a sock that fits in my video on how to knit socks that fit, and I'll leave a link below. So I'm going to take 1 metre of yarn, and at the point that it measures a metre I will make a slip knot, and I know that that's plenty of yarn for me to knit a sock that's 60 stitches in diameter. I then pop the slip knot onto the needle, and then I will cast on 60 stitches. Like I said, for more details of this long tail cast on, I will leave a link below, but I didn't want to repeat myself. So there I have 60 stitches on the needles, and I've counted 30 stitches into my stitch count because we're going to now split those stitches onto the cable needle like so. And we want to make sure that we do not twist the stitches at all on these needles, so I'm straightening those up so that the bottom of the stitch is all facing in the same direction, and I'm going to start working on the front. So you're going to be working on this side first, and then you're going to turn it around and work on the back side. So you're only ever working on half of the work. You shouldn't ever have it so that your cable isn't stuck out the side of your work, if that makes sense. So I'm going to pop my needle, engage my needle ready to start knitting, and I'm going to pop the end of my yarn down there out the way, and then the working yarn over the needle ready to start knitting. So I've got, make sure that you've got the right yarn, not the end that's hanging there, and then you're going to do 2 knit stitches because you're going to start with a 2x2 rib. So I've just done 1 stitch there, and I'm just going to tug it slightly just so that the loop is not too loose where the beginning of the round is. And then I'm going to knit 2, purl 2. Knit 2, purl 2. And I'm going to continue with knit 2, purl 2 to the end of the row. So I've got to the end of that needle and I've actually finished with a knit 2. It's always best when you're starting on the next needle to start with a knit. So what I'm going to do is transfer 2 of my stitches. I'm pulling that loop through. 2 of my stitches from that side of the needle to this one. You'll see that it looks quite a distance between these stitches and the one you've worked, but don't worry about that, they will close up. So I'm going to do another 2 purls, and then you'll be starting your next needle with a knit, and it's much easier to get a nice finish where the join of the work is on either side if you start with a knit. So I finished those 2 purls. I'm going to turn those needles round. I'm going to engage the front needle again and pull out the back needle, ready to work on the front. And I'm going to start with a knit because we finished with 2 purls on that side. You may find that if you're doing a different stitch count that you won't have to transfer those stitches over. I'm going to carry on with knit 2, purl 2 across the back of the work. So I'm now finished one round, and you can see that there is quite a gap between the beginning and the end of the round, but do not worry about this, it will close up afterwards. You wouldn't believe it, but it really does. So then I'm going to turn the work around and engage the front needle again, and I'll carry on doing the 2x2 rib in magic loop for about 17 rounds, but it's really up to you how many rounds of rib you do. Depends on your personal taste. So again, when I'm starting the round, I'll just give a little bit more of a tug just at the beginning of the round to help close that in. I've now done 2 rounds of rib, and you can see how it's starting to close up there, but it will do even more as you keep on knitting your rounds of 2x2 rib. So I'm going to keep going. Just make sure that you don't get your end muddled up with your working yarn. Keep that down there. I'm just going to carry on in 2x2 rib for about 17 rounds. I've now done 17 repeats of the knit 2, purl 2, and you can see that at the beginning of the round that loose bit has completely closed up, so you don't need to worry about the looseness of the beginning of the round. And I've just popped a progress keeper there so I can see where my beginning, to mark where the beginning of the round is. So now I'm going to continue just in plain knit all the way round, and I'm going to do the same start. I'm going to be knitting and giving it a little bit of a tug at the beginning just so that it doesn't end up with a ladder up the side, and then I'm going to do plain knit all the way around, and I'll check back with you in a minute. So now I've come to the other side, I'm engaging the front needle, I'm pulling out the back and then starting on the first stitch, and then just keeping that area closed at the beginning of the needle, and I'm just going to keep going plain knit, and I'll check back with you when I've knitted a few more rows to show you what it looks like. So there we are. I've done quite a few rows now just to show you how that looks, and I'm going to carry on knitting, just knit in the round all the way till I've done about 5 or 6 inches from the cast on edge. So in order to work out how long you want your sock, I'd measure from the floor where you've next to your heel up to the position where you want your sock to meet on your leg, and then use this measurement minus 2 inches, and that's how much you need to knit from this cast on edge of your plain stockinette stitch. You could of course have quite short socks where you started doing your heel flap here, but this obviously won't go very far up your leg. It's completely up to you. So I'll see you in 2 weeks when I'll have my next tutorial, part 2, on how I knit the heel flap and gusset on the top down sock. Happy knitting, bye!